Welcome to OneVerse. I have with me Todd Hostetler, pastor at City on a Hill Teaching Center, and also Jeff Millslegel from City on a Hill. And they're going to discuss a Bible verse that I'm going to give them. It's a surprise. And Todd, surprise, it's for you first. And it's a New Testament verse. And that is 1 John 3:18. That says, "My little children, let us not love in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth." That's 1 John 3:18.
All right, thank you. I know that Jeff and I, you probably get weary of hearing us say this, but I do love 1 John. I actually have, again, I took some time and did a verse by verse notes a couple of years ago on 1 John. Make sure you spend some time in it. So it's 1 John chapter 3, verse number 18. I'm going to read it to you in the Amplified Bible. Little children, let us not love merely in theory or in speech, but in deed and in truth, in practice and in sincerity. Let me read the next verse. That goes on to say, but by this we shall come to know, perceive, recognize, and understand that we are of the truth and can reassure, quiet, conciliate, and pacify our hearts in his presence. So first of all, this starts off, again, this is John. And, when you think about biblical individuals, John is one of my favorite people of all the biblical characters because of his closeness to Jesus Christ. If you think about Paul is the person that has the greatest revelation out of any man in the Bible, the greatest revelation of the new covenant in Jesus Christ, in the new covenant of the blood. He had that revelation. But I would submit to you that John has the greatest revelation of the love of Jesus. When you read through John's gospel, when you read through 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, even in the book of Revelation, you see that theme of love and the understanding of love that comes through John. So when John speaks to us here in John 3:18 and speaks about love, we should stop and take note of exactly what he's saying, because nobody has a greater revelation on this than does John. First of all, as Jesus is speaking through John, he lets us know, little children. Isn't that a beautiful picture? I mean, this is just saying, oh, listen, just relax, little one. I've got you taken care of. This is the Father letting you know, in his eyes, you are his precious little son or daughter. Little children, let us not merely love in theory. A lot of that goes on. The word love is thrown around an awful lot in our culture, and most people truly don't know what the word love means. Again, if you look at John in his gospel, in John chapter 21, there is that beautiful ending when we do see that there are 3 different variations on what the word love means. And the love that Jesus is speaking about is that love that is giving all to him. It's not selfish. It is trusting in him entirely. Little children, don't just love in theory or in speech, but in deed, in truth, in practice, and in sincerity. You should know, if you know me, you should know I love you, not just based on the words that I say. I should be able to not speak a word, but still convey to you that I love you in Jesus Christ, because if I have that love of Christ in me and I'm conveying it, you will feel it and you will know it. That's what we need to share with each other. Jeff, what do you think about 1 John chapter 3, verse 18?
See, this is the problem of going second. When you follow Pastor Todd, you're like, I don't know what more I could say. But let me throw something out here that I always find fascinating with John. So there's this real contrast in writing style between Paul and John. Paul, if you ever try to diagram a sentence of Paul's, it's run-on sentences. It's really complicated. It's a bit of a mess. And he's trying to usually convey something that's relatively simple, but he has a long way around the barn to get there. John's the other way around. His writing is very, very simple. And the words are very easy to understand. And how it all connects together is it's easy to grasp, and yet at the same time, this is really deep stuff that he says here. Now I'm going to back up a few verses, and this is verse 16. He says, by this, so he's telling you, here's something that's coming. By this, we know that we know love, because he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. In other words, well, that's pretty easy to understand, but boy, that's a deep thing to do, right? But whoever has this world's goods, sees his brother in need, and shuts up his heart from him, how does the love of God abide in him? Again, easy thing to understand, but boy, this is really really John telling people, folks, we really need to be showing love this way. This is how we do this, by taking care of each other. Then we get to this verse. My little children, let us not love in word or tongue, but in deed and truth. The old timers would say, you can't just talk the talk, but you got to walk the talk. All right. You really need to be living out your faith. And that's really what John, I believe, is saying this. And then he drops down the very next verse. By this we know, and you'll see this, by the way, a lot in John, just by this or in this. A lot of these are by this. By this we know that we are of the truth and shall assure our hearts before him. In other words, this is what real Christian faith looks like, that we're taking care of each other, that we're not just all talk, but there's a bit of direct action here that's involved in it. No, that's not why we're saved, because we give a certain amount and we do certain things. But it really is an indication of what's really going on in our heart. When we say we love each other, do we really? I mean, do we really? Is it more than just something we say, or is it something in how we do? Again, John's got just huge, deep application and meaning for the things that John is sharing about here. All right, Pastor Todd, go ahead, wrap this thing up here for us.
Well, let's wrap it up by looking at the very next verse. I read it, but just think about this. So he's talking about the importance of love. And then in verse number 19, speaking about love, by this, by what? By love. By this, we shall come to know, perceive, recognize, and understand that we are of the truth. And we can reassure, quiet, conciliate, and pacify our hearts in his presence. It is in love, when we live and act in his love, it is by this that we know we are living in his truth. This will bring peace, pacification, just his perfect peace into our lives. You want peace? Start with love. Start by loving in that love of Christ for others. Hey, thanks for letting Jeff and Don and I come into your homes today. It's always a joy to share a deeper perspective in the Word of God. And we'll look at another verse next time on OneVerse.